In this video, we'll be taking a look at 2 college football games happening on September 1st, 2023, and providing you with free team picks and total picks for each one of those games. So 2 picks for each game, 4 picks in total. Welcome back to Cash Out Sports. Let's dive right into it. Oh, and don't forget to subscribe and to click the bell icon to get notified as soon as these videos get released so that you have more time to plan out your bets as we provide these videos on a daily basis. I can guarantee that you'll have all the important information that you'll need on these 2 college football games after fully watching this video. One more thing before we start, if you would like to gain access to our best exclusive sports picks to take your journey to the next level, then check out our Patreon in the link down below where we offer our best single picks, parlay picks, and much more. Now let's get started. Louisville versus Georgia Tech. The college football betting markets have some interesting takes on a Louisville Cardinals team that finished 7-5 straight up a year ago. Louisville sits as the lofty third choice to win the Atlantic Coast Conference title this year, well behind the 2 presumptive favorites Clemson and Florida State. Any talk of conference championships is always going to be secondary to getting off to a good start this year for Louisville, and we will see if those high expectations are warranted. The Cardinals come into the home of the NFL's Atlanta Falcons as -8 neutral field chalk against the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets, a team that's essentially playing in their backyard. Jeff Brohm's hiring as Louisville's head coach this year is strongly behind the expectations being accelerated for this Cardinals program, and now we get to see if he's got his guys ready out of the gate to grab a conference win. Louisville is coming off an 8-win season and now begin the Jeff Brohm era. Louisville hasn't had back-to-back winning seasons since 2016 to 2017, when Bobby Petrino was coaching the squad. Purdue and Cal transfer Jack Plummer should take over at quarterback, a guy who has 6,500 yards and 47 touchdowns. Jawhar Jordan returns as Louisville's leading rusher after 815 yards and 4 touchdowns, while Omri Huggins, Bruce, and Chris Bell are a receiving duo that combined for 400 yards and 2 touchdowns. Defensively, Jarvis Brownlee Jr. returns after 66 tackles. Ashton Gillott had 7 sacks, and Quincy Riley led Louisville with 3 sacks. Oddsmakers are predicting a strong year for Louisville, as only Clemson and Florida State have better odds to win the Atlantic Coast Conference. To me, it will come down to the consistency of Plummer at quarterback if Louisville can seriously compete for a conference title. Georgia Tech won 5 games last year and entered the first full year under Coach Brent Key. There's a new offensive coordinator as well in Buster Faulkner. Georgia Tech is looking for its first winning season since 2018. The Texas Aggies transfer Haynes King will likely take over at quarterback, a guy who had 1,600 passing yards and 10 touchdowns with the Aggies. Dante Smith returns after 420 rushing yards and 5 touchdowns, while Malik Rutherford and Dylan Leonard are a receiving duo that produced 34 receptions and more than 300 yards. Defensively, LaMiles Brooks returns after 52 tackles. Daquan Dowse had 3.5 sacks and KJ Wallace had 1 interception. Georgia Tech lost a lot of production on both sides of the ball, including its quarterback, leading rusher, oodles of receivers, and its top 3 tacklers. It's no surprise Georgia Tech is tied with Virginia for the worst odds to win the Atlantic Coast Conference. Key, who is a full-time head coach for the first time, has his work cut out for him. Louisville's the team with the far greater upside here, and in a Week 1 game where there is a clear disparity there, everyone believes Louisville will be better than Georgia Tech this year. I'm always going to want to side with the team that's got the far greater upside. Remember, sloppy football is everywhere in early September. Why risk taking a likely bad team potentially playing sloppy football? There just isn't enough margin for error there when the point spread could also look laughable 8 weeks from now when, say, the Cardinals are 7-1 and Georgia Tech has a single win. The spread is still in single digits here as everyone is working off all the same numbers from a season ago. Now this is also coming from a bettor in myself who does believe Louisville's getting a little too much credit already. Brohm was 1-4 against the spread last year at Purdue as a favorite against FBS competition, and went 2-2 against the spread in that role in 2021, 1-4 against the spread in 2020, 1-3 against the spread in 2019, and 4-5 against the spread in 2018. That's a 9-18 against the spread mark for Brohm as a favorite in recent years. This is not the role he's thrived in against the number, but the Cardinals are by far the more talented team in this matchup, and that hasn't always been the case for Brohm laying chalk in the past. Yet, it's still about questioning just how good Louisville is going to be this year versus questioning if Georgia Tech is going to be anything close to good. A rare conference game to start the season, and I'm not going to lie about considering the home dog. This is a big game to start the season, and it's still a feeling process to lay this many points. With that said, Louisville has the third best odds to win the Atlantic Coast Conference and has good talent on both sides of the ball. Georgia Tech has a new coaching staff and tons of players to replace. There's going to be early growing pains for Georgia Tech. Even with the point spread as the great equalizer, I've got to lay it with the Cardinals as Brome looks to make a good first impression. Give me Louisville in a double-digit victory as it's in a far better spot roster-wise. So the Louisville Cardinals to win and cover the spread as favorites is our full game side pick. Both of these teams are rather unpredictable this season. Both have new head coaches, new quarterbacks, and high hopes for their seasons and futures. Louisville arguably has more talent with the 5th best recruiting class in 2023 compared to Georgia Tech, which is 12th. On the flip side, Georgia Tech is returning 69% production of offense and 66% on defense compared to Louisville, which is returning 61% on offense, but only 50% on defense. These teams are pretty evenly matched on paper. The Cardinals averaged 27 points per game last season with a Heisman-caliber quarterback, and their head coach's team in 2022 averaged 27 points per game. The Yellow Jackets averaged a measly 17 points per game last season, and although they no longer run the triple option, their offense is still low scoring. Louisville hit the under in all 5 of their last 5 games, 4 of their last 5 games in Week 1, and 4 of their last 5 games in September. Georgia Tech hit the under in 5 of their last 7 games in September. The NCAA adopted an NFL model where the clock no longer stops on first downs except in the last 2 minutes. Although it was a small sample size in Week 0, this led to 5 fewer plays per game and 3 minutes less of game time compared to last season. This doesn't sound like much, but it also led to 7 of the 10 Division I football games going under. 2 offenses who are replacing quarterbacks and who averaged less than 30 points per game last season also have 2 new head coaches and have less time to play the game. As laid out earlier, there are a lot of new pieces on both of these teams and key offensive positions, so it could take some time to gel. I think both teams may have more potent offenses than they did a year ago, but we probably won't see it here in the first game for both teams. Louisville is a strong defensive team, allowing just 19 points per game last season and ranking 22nd in total yards and 22nd against the pass. Georgia Tech will have a hard time moving the ball, as will Louisville against an improved Tech defense. The total seems a bit high here, and considering everything, especially the new clock rules, under the projected total is our full game total pick. Stanford versus Hawaii. It's Friday night lights from Honolulu when Hawaii welcomes Stanford in college football's Week 1. This will be the season opener for the Cardinal and the first game under new head coach Troy Taylor. Hawaii played at Vanderbilt last Saturday, dropping a 36-28 decision after a late charge fell short. This is the first meeting between the schools since 1974, and kickoff is scheduled from the Clarence T.C. Ching Complex. There aren't too many bright spots for the Cardinal among the 2022 season. After a big win over Colgate in the opener, Stanford lost 4 straight before close wins over Notre Dame and Arizona State. A 5-game losing streak would finish off the year, leaving the Cardinals sitting at 3-9 overall and 1-8 in the Pac-12. 2023 is head coach Troy Taylor's chance to start turning things around at Stanford. He's coming off 43 points and 500 total yards per game at Sacramento State, so hopes are high that the Cardinal will turn around their offensive fortunes. The good news is that Stanford has some running back talent in E.J. Smith, and Benjamin Urosek should be a solid tight end. The team will need as much returning experience as it can get. Over on the Warriors side, they've got a lot of work to do as well after finishing 3-10 overall last year with a 2-6 Mountain West mark. Hawaii finished ahead of only Nevada in the West Division and couldn't win consecutive games all season. Wins over Duquesne, Nevada, and UNLV were the only notable games from that campaign. Heading into this season, Hawaii gets Timmy Chang back for a second year and hoping to make improvements. The offensive line needs to reform some chemistry along the way, and the passing game was highly underwhelming last year. That said, the Warriors still have a good center in Aliki Tanabasa, and the running back tandem of Tylen Hines and Nasji Bryant Lele should be effective. The Cardinal won only 3 games last season, and they have just 5 starters from that team coming back. They were one of the worst offensive teams in the country last season and won't be much better this season with their projected starting quarterbacks having 31 pass attempts between them. They will likely keep the ball in E.J. Smith's hands after he averaged 6.9 yards per carry last season, but it won't them much good against a Hawaii defense that gave up less than 40 rushing yards in their first game. Expect the Rainbow Warriors to stack the box and force the Cardinal to beat them through the air, which isn't going to happen. The Rainbow Warriors lost their first game of the season, but they put up a fight against a heavily favored Vanderbilt team. They threw for over 300 yards in the loss and will be able to pick up a lot of yards through the air against a Cardinal team that lost a lot of key players on defense and struggled against the pass last season, so expect Stanford to have a hard time slowing them down in this game. These two have played 3 times, with all games taking place in Hawaii and all won by Stanford. The Cardinal are coming into this with a ton of questions. Most importantly, who will be their quarterback? I would expect them to look to their run game early, and the Rainbow Warriors did a great job last week against the run. Hawaii also looked good in implementing the run and shoot offense, and if Shager cleans things up a bit and gets a bit more time to work in the pocket, then he could really pick apart Stanford's defense that is relying on a ton of new faces. They've really put Hawaii's brains to the test by opening the season with Vanderbilt and Stanford, and just as they did in Week 0, I believe they'll compete well again. Hawaii comes into this contest with a full game under their belt, and they'll be taking on a new regime in Stanford that's about to get its feet wet for the first time. The styles will also clash, as the Cardinal will lean on the ground game and their physical prowess, while the Warriors will flow through the air and possess a noticeable advantage in the passing game. There's a reason the margin on this contest is so close, as the hosts have a real chance of upsetting a Pac-12 school here. Hawaii is poised to make a little noise this season, and a big game over Stanford could go a long way towards a big season for the Rainbow Warriors. So the Hawaii Rainbow Warriors to cover the spread as underdogs is our full game side pick. Last week, the Rainbow Warriors kicked things off with 63 combined points with Vanderbilt. The run and shoot was definitely in motion and looks like it could be a big-time points producer for Hawaii. Shager is definitely a guy to watch behind center this season. The Warriors' signal caller is not afraid to get all of his weapons involved and should do well in switching off when he recognizes if a certain set of hands isn't in a game. The Cardinal offense should be very interesting to watch as they develop an identity under Taylor, who has a pedigree for getting big-time points from his offenses in the past. I expect some unique looks from their side which could cause some turmoil for the Hawaii defense in the process. The Cardinal averaged 19.5 points per game last season and 17.5 points per game on the road. They won't throw the ball well, but they will be able to run it on the ground against a defense that gave up 35 points in its first game, so expect them to score at least 21 points in this game. The Rainbow Warriors scored 28 points in their first game. They didn't run the ball much and they threw for over 300 yards. The Cardinal were average against the pass last season and lost a lot of depth on defense, so expect the Rainbow Warriors to put up similar offensive numbers in this game, which will be enough points to push the score past the total. Over the projected total is our full game total pick. That's all for now, so if you have any other games you would like reviewed, then leave a comment down below with the game you would like analyzed. Subscribe to our channel, leave a like on this video, and we'll get to it as soon as we possibly can. We would also love to hear your opinion on the picks presented to you in this video, whether you agree or disagree with them, so leave a comment down below and do let us know.